Tonight, we're going to have a forum. We were going to have a debate, but some candidates didn't show up. I don't think they want your questions. Could be, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. We have Doc Moylan tonight. We're going to... It's not hooked up. It's not hooked up.
Good evening, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here at the Lehigh Valley Tea Party meeting. I've been here a couple times before, but again, I want to give you some background on myself. My name is Dr. David Moylan, but my friends and my deputy coroners call me Doc, and I hope after tonight you will too. Basically, I'm a radiation oncologist. I practice medicine at the Simon Kramer Cancer Institute in New Philadelphia, Schuylkill County. Again, that's one of the 6 counties in the 17th Congressional District. I've been practicing there since 1986 when I came up from Jefferson Medical College. For the last 3 years, I've been Schuylkill County coroner. And Valerie, I want to tell you that I have some pencils left over from my campaign as county coroner that I'd be happy to donate to our troops. Well, where am I philosophically? I'm registered Republican, but of course, in a district where there's a 7-4 Democrat to Republican registration, I'm reaching across the aisle. And my theme is common sense and common values. Common sense and common values. If I get elected to this position, this will be my constant companion. This is a little handbook, the Constitution of the United States. And what inspired that? The Declaration of Independence. And I just heard some lawyers talking about a bill that was before them. And the lawyer who was putting the motion forward quoted, "The laws of nature and of nature's God." The judges questioned the man's sanity and whether he was some kind of a nature worshiper, not recognizing it, that it came from the preamble and the Declaration of Independence. But when I'm on the floor of the House of Representatives and a bill comes up for consideration, I'm going to first pull this out and see if the legislation is authorized by this, or is this something that better go back to the states? And if it is, the next question I'm going to ask is, how is it going to help the people in the 17th Congressional District? And I want to represent everyone, independents, Democrats, Republicans. But what's it going to do for our part of the state? The next question is, what's it going to do for the United States of America? And I wholeheartedly believe that we are an exceptional nation. The last question is, hey, it might be the best piece of legislation since they authorized the slicing of bread. But can we afford it when we're borrowing 46 cents on the dollar? So, before I open the floor to questions, I just want to tell you about an honor that I've had during this campaign. The Eagle Forum, Phyllis Schlafly, Eagle Forum, she was having a congressional fundraiser down in suburban Philadelphia. The guest speaker was Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. And one of the questions he got from the audience is, why aren't you running for president? There you go. But I opened talking about, because I'm a history buff, and one of the historical vignettes that I cited went back to the Moro War, which was in the Philippines, and there was a Muslim insurrection. The native Philippines also revolted, but that was easily controllable. The Muslims on Mindanao, not so controllable. And there's a legend, apocryphal legend, that Blackjack Pershing, who was the general that commanded the expeditionary force in France during World War I, he captured 50 Muslim insurgents, and this was total war. He had 49 of them executed, and the firing squad reportedly dipped the bullets into pig blood, which is an anathema to a Muslim. And the 49 were buried in a mass grave, and the one survivor was allowed to escape. Pig entrails were poured on the bodies before they were covered up. That quieted down the insurrection for the next 50 years. So I use that as a backdrop. I spoke about Colonel West's unconventional interrogation techniques. And during it was the year 2003, it was north of Baghdad, and he had to interrogate a Iraqi policeman. They thought he was a double agent. His name was Mahmoudi. He wasn't really cooperating. So Colonel West took him out back and narrowly missed his head with a shot from his .45 or his Beretta, whatever they were using back then. They were going to court-martial him. This hero who served for 20 years with the 20th Artillery Regiment. He could have faced 11 years in Leavenworth for his impertinence. But they cut him a deal. They fined him. They allowed him to retire. They asked him, Colonel, would you do that again? And he said, to save the lives of my men, I would go through hell carrying a gasoline can.
There you go.
But anyway, they were talking, some of the questions he had to field were, what are we going to do with the ISIS, ISIL? America has lost her stomach for war. And Alan West said, I'm tired of hearing such crap.
Yup. Crap-a-loo.
Anyway, that's my introduction. I'll be happy to field any questions. And again, I'm going to approach the legal field legislation the way I approach medicine. If I don't know the answer, I'm going to understand the question, research it, get consultation, and come up with a treatment plan.
Yep.
Testing.
Question?
Yes, sir.
We have one over here.
Thank you. Pennsylvania's in the middle of an energy renaissance. What will you do to help cut through the bureaucracy that is impeding drilling, pipeline construction, etc.?
Well, if you want to stifle an industry or any entrepreneurial venture, there's 4 or 3 surefire ways of doing it. One, overtaxation, other, overregulation, and the third thing is litigation. And our current congressman has backed EPA regulations. He voted against some relief that has gone through the House of Representatives, has passed, that would take the EPA off the backs of our coal industry and other energy, carbon-based resources in the state. So we have got to rein in the EPA. And Matthew Cartwright, I believe, is a foot soldier in the war on coal. And in fact, when he was interviewed about this war on coal in the Morning Call, he characterized it as political hack nonsense.
Uh-oh.
That is the pot calling the kettle black.
Conspiracy.
Yes.
Hi, Doc. I hail from the coal regions. How's it going up there with the people? Are they listening to you? Because a lot of them are Democrats.
I think that Mr. Cartwright is going to be in for a big surprise on November 5th.
I hope
The
so.
support I'm getting from Schuylkill County is overwhelming. And, you know, people have told me, in fact, Timmy Holden said, they don't care about mining coal up in Scranton. That's not what I'm hearing from the people up there. And if we could tap into this gold, the black gold that's beneath our feet up there, we could create a boom town. This could be the new North Dakota with 0% unemployment, cheap energy, and again, energy is a surrogate for standard of living. So if we can get cheap energy here, we're going to be booming. That's my prediction. I'll do everything in my power to bring common sense to prevail in here. Of course, we have to have all of the above energy policy. We've got to look back at nuclear. The renewables, certainly, maybe by 2030, they'll have a significant contribution to our energy policy. But coal, oil, gas, carbon. I went to a conference in Las Vegas, the 9th International Conference on Climate Change. Global warming hasn't warmed up in the last 17 years. They had to change the name of the argument to climate change. And believe me, the scientists down there is no consensus here. Everybody agrees we have to study it, but certainly we're not jeopardizing our environment because of carbon dioxide. We have to do this responsibly. We put a man on the moon in 9 years. We can learn how to do hydrofracking and also to take the carbon, the solid carbon, the coal, and liquefy it. There's a half dozen different ways of doing that, and then it would be convenient. We could all burn it in any of our engines to the benefit of everybody. What we're doing now is we're taking our food, corn, and we're burning it. Let's take something we can't eat, like coal, and turn that into a liquid. That's what they're doing out in Wyoming. There's a carbon county in Wyoming. The coal comes up, it's bituminous. It comes out at Medicine Bow, and they liquefy it. They turn it into methanol, which is a clean burning liquid fuel.
Hi, what are you going to do if the speaker brings up a bill, a 2,000-page bill, and only gives you 24 or 48 hours to read it, which isn't enough time, and then force you to vote, try to force a vote on it? What are you going to do in that instance?
That already happened. This is the Affordable Care Act. This is the one of the Republican alternatives to it. That should have been tabled. But again, not one Republican voted for it. I'm a slow reader, so we're just going to have to take our time about it and understand it before we do it. I would not vote for it unless I've read it or at least seen the Cliff Notes version of it. And
You have to pass it in order to know what's in it.
common sense and common values.
I have a question for you. The federal government has taken over so many of our state rights because our governors and representatives are just giving it away. How are you going to get those rights back to us when we're going to be fighting for the governors to do it? But we have governors that are real happy to give it away with the dollar pocket, to get them reelected. So how can you help on the federal level to help us get the state rights back, like in education, EPA, all that?
We don't want Common Core.
Regarding the EPA, there has been a proposal, I heard about it at the climate change meeting, to come up with a new EPA, and there would be a 5-year transition period from the current one based in Washington to one that would base in Topeka, Kansas. There would be 50 subunits that would be represented there. Each state would send 3 reps, and there'd be a body of 150. I think we'd have a better chance of speaking for the interests of each state rather than have a bureaucracy down in Washington shoving it down our throats.
And the education.
Well, I would like to start an investigation of the Department of Education.
Yep, there you go.
Seems like education is a local problem. It's a local responsibility. We're pumping money down to Washington, and it's going into some black hole down there.
Yep,
Common Core.
yep. Woo! That's it.
I'm going to tell you, I don't fully understand Common Core. But I was here when Peg Luxick spoke, and she again is an expert on that. But I would agree with some people have already called for congressional hearings on
Oh,
this.
yes.
To get some transparency here so that we can all understand it. Of course, yeah, again, Saul Alinsky says, you control the language and you're going to control the masses. Well, the language is we want to have high standards for our kids so that they come through high school and the grade school and they can make something of their life. And that's supposedly what Common Core is all about. I think it's a sham, but we need to investigate it. I know in our own state, there's movement away from the Common Core. We've modified it, but again, I think it's got to be a local issue, and I would push congressional hearings on the Common Core
Yep.
educational
There you
standards.
go.
Thanks to the ACLU, because they're the ones that do that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Hey Doc, good to see you. Question for you. How are you going to deal with the unions and the fact that a large part of this district has a strong union base which probably don't agree with Cartwright's position, but because they're Democrats, they're going to be pretty much cajoled or forced or otherwise intimidated to vote for Democrats? How are you going to reach across to them? What's your message going to be?
Matt, thanks for that question. I am going to appeal to common values. And again, thank God for the secret ballot. Because once a union worker goes into that ballot booth, they can't be tracked. And the same protection should be afforded people when unions are trying to organize. It's got to be a secret ballot. But as up in Scranton, I'm talking about something that seems to be resonating there with these coal workers, etc. And that is the sanctity of human life. Okay, sanctity of human life. And I've spoken to many people and they're saying, I'm a Democrat, but without human life, where are we? What good is a job from there? So I'm appealing to that aspect of it. The Second Amendment, that is resonating with these union workers. Many of them have NRA caps on, etc. So I think that stuff like that reaches beyond unionism. Now, of course, when you talk to anybody about interrupting their revenue stream, the back gets up, they bristle. And again, that has to do with Medicare, Medicaid, the people that are making corn into ethanol. That's subsidy. You start talking about interrupting revenue streams and people become very defensive. And of course, that's human nature.
Hi, Glenn Costenbader here. I'd like to back up to the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare. And I believe you said you have the Republican alternative to that?
I'm going to say that there are about 4 Republican alternatives to it. They've been introduced as House resolutions. This happens to be one put forth by Mr. Price, Dr. Price. It's about 190 pages.
Okay, because my question is now, this has been going on for years now, this Obamacare. Most people don't like it. The more we find out about it, they like it even less. But I cannot believe by this time the Republicans couldn't come up with a single comprehensive alternative, and it would be out there for the people to see it. And that's the frustrating part for me, why they can't come up with one single plan and put it out there in the public and show a better alternative. Thanks.
I agree with your comments, and I think we do have a leadership problem in the House of Representatives as well as in the...
Republican, that's the problem.
This, what's at your chairs, is a 12-point plan and it includes the Price bill, Dr. Paul Brown's bill kind of throws in a couple that emphasize human life. This was developed by a colleague, Dr. Chad Mathis. He was running down in Alabama. And down there, they like to have about 6. We only have about 3 people in our primaries for the House. They had about 6. And unfortunately, he did not make it past the first round. And there were only 2 finalists. But like in the Civil War, when somebody goes down carrying the standard, somebody else picks it up, hopefully before it hits the ground. So I've embraced the Chad Mathis program, and with his approval, I'm hopefully going to carry that. But if I get into Congress, when I get into Congress, I would be sitting down with the doctor caucus and see if we could get behind one plan, and show unity and try to get that. But again, the Democrats are always saying, you're just a critic of President Obama. You have no alternatives. We want to have a viable alternative. But of course, we've got to retake the Senate. Otherwise, where the bills go, they go to the Senate to die. There's 350 languishing on Harry Reid's desk.
Hey, Dr. Hayden Phillips. The national debt now is 17 trillion and growing astronomically. When you take office in January, it will be about the time, I think in that spring, when you'll be voting on raising the national debt or maintaining it. Could you tell us, would you vote to raise the national debt?
Since Matt Cartwright has been in office, the debt went up $1.05 trillion. What is $1 trillion? Just to get a concept of that. But if you took $100 bills, or $1 bills, $1 bills and started stacking them to get to $1 trillion, it would be about 70 miles into the sky. 70,000 miles into the sky. I'm thinking that that's part of the president's space program. That's a quarter away to the moon. A quarter away to the moon. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And one of the first proposals that I'd like to have my name on as a co-sponsor would be the balanced budget amendment. The balanced budget amendment, and with the penalty that Steve Daines put in, that if you don't, within a window of time, get it right, the paychecks stop coming from the Department of Treasury. So, it's just not sustainable. So I would be in favor of, and again, the one exception, which we might be facing, times of war. Times of war.
Doc, thank you for coming. Joe Malia from Allentown. To keep along the same vein as what Hayden just brought up, do you know about and how do you feel about the penny plan? Where 1 cent from every dollar we spend will be put aside to help pay towards the national debt?
I haven't vetted that, but something along those lines is intriguing.
Come up with a plan to get rid of the national debt, and that is to empty the salt domes down in the Gulf of Mexico that we've been filling for 40 years, probably have 1 trillion barrels of oil there that we've been paying for, and it's like a piggy bank. We take that oil, we quit buying from outside sources, or we sell it to China for our debt, and there is no debt because we've got so much oil stuffed in those things down there that we've been buying from I don't know who over these last 40 years. It's called the strategic reserve. We don't need it anymore. Like you said, we've got all the oil and gas and coal that we need right out here on dry land. And we're still buying more oil from other people, stuffing it in the salt domes there as a reserve. You take that reserve, you sell it to China or somebody else, or we start selling it back to the gas companies. We bought it at probably 50 cents on the dollar 20, 30, 40 years ago. We can make a hell of a profit right now.
There you go.
Hi, Doc. I have a tough question for you. You've been talking about things that are very near and dear to our hearts. My question for you is, name one thing that we may not agree with you on. One stance. That, like one issue that you might fall behind the Tea Party line. Told you it was tough.
I'm a loss for words. Anybody want to suggest something?
Oh, I got you. Amnesty, how about that? Do you want amnesty?
Immigration amnesty?
Yeah, you want that?
Done a little research on this, and I came across the American Legion plan for dealing with illegal immigration in the United States. And I'm in agreement with that. And it's 5 steps, basically 5 steps. One is secure the borders and other points of entry, okay? Not just the southern border. When the container vessel comes in with 1,000 containers, when we only check 1 out of 10, that's a problem. So we got to secure the borders, militarize them if we need to. Amnesty, it didn't work back in 1986 when Ronald Reagan had a one-time 2.7 million amnesty. There's been 6 others in the last 15 years or so. Again, didn't take care of the problem. There's perhaps conservatively estimates of 11 million illegal or undocumented, however, in the country. That could be as high as 20 million. And as I said last night in an event, my wife is an immigrant. She came in from Canada as a young woman with her mother and did it the right way, went through the legal channels, and that was one of the prouder days of my life when she took the oath of allegiance down there in Callow Hill Road in Philadelphia. So again, amnesty's not going to do it. The American Legion says let's do better enforcement at the local level. Guys like Lou Barletta, at the state level, at the federal level, and that will make the environment inhospitable to the illegals. And it's estimated that maybe 1.5 million will return home each year. It won't be a mass deportation, but certainly over a decade we could have the problem under control. So amnesty, I think, is just going to further aggravate the problem.
Hi, Doc. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Doc. Michael Gross, Bethlehem Township. My question actually is for you to ask Representative Cartwright a question. That being, he is Pelosi's champion on the Affordable Health Care Act. Why doesn't he float a bill to have Congress remove themselves from the exemption of being on the Affordable Health Care Act and perhaps put their Cadillac medical program, give it to our military veterans in place to show how serious it really is.
Hank, write that down, because I will use that in the debate. I'm going to be debating the congressman on 2 occasions. The one that he's agreed to is October 29th, and that'll be on WVIA up in Pittston.
Hi, Doc. I heard something on the news the other day. They had Representative Barletta, Representative Dent, and Cartwright, and they asked a question on the Middle East war or conflict, whatever, to who supports it. And Cartwright was the only one that said that he would not support it. What are your views?
Again, I'm the history buff. But when we look back in history, what happened in World War II? There were, we lost a lot of the battles in the very first 4 months or so. And we lost Wake Island, which was kind of the Alamo of the Pacific. And we lost Bataan Peninsula and Corregidor. Wake Island, we could bypass that. That wasn't important. Whenever a Navy ship was going by, they'd lob a couple shells onto the Japanese garrison there. We could bypass that. We could not bypass the Philippines. And I'm just fearful that unless we're going to take on ISIL in Manhattan, or maybe give them the Staten Island borough, and we'll make our stand at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Okay? We're going to have to go back there, and we're going to have men on the ground, brave men, to do what has to be done. But there was a saying in the Roman Empire, Romanus civis sum. I am a Roman citizen, and that guaranteed you protection no matter where you went in the Roman Empire. Nobody would dare touch you. That type of protection is not enjoyed by our citizens anymore. That is an act of war. And we went to war for less reasons. In 1812, the British impressed 4 sailors at sea on the USS Chesapeake, and that was one of the grounds for going to war in 1812. So we have grounds for war here. It should be done legally. We should go to the Congress, but we have to defend ourselves.
That's right.
Thank you, Dr. Moylan. Let's give Dr. another hand.